I want to welcome you to the People Concern. I hope your onboarding is going well and that you have learned a lot and have the opportunity to interact with some of your colleagues. I know we've been trying to provide a very robust onboarding process, given the constraints we have, obviously, with COVID and the ability to kind of gather in person. But I know that Carrie has been working really hard with Isabel and Michelle and the rest of the people leaders to welcome you into the agency. So I hope that's going well, and it's been a good experience so far. So just a quick background about the agency, and then I want to spend most of our time together talking about Kensington. And so my format here this morning is to spend some time giving you information, but I don't want this just to be an hour of me talking at you. We really like dialogue here. So if you have questions about Kensington or about the agency or anything I say or don't say, feel free to ask them. So we have just an hour together this morning, so I want to make the most of it. So I'm sure all of you are aware that the People Concern was formed in 2016, so 4 years ago, in the merger between the Ocean Park Community Center and Lamp Community downtown. And Lamp Community was actually started by a woman named Molly Lowry, who was one of my predecessors. She was the director of then OPCC from 1976 to 84, and then she left in 1985 to go downtown and start Lamp because she always wanted to work with seriously mentally ill people in Skid Row. And so it was always her hope that the organizations would be brought together. And they finally did. Molly passed away about 3 years ago. And so before she died, she actually had the opportunity to see the organizations come together. So under the auspices of the People Concern, we have, as you're probably aware, we're a county-wide organization. We provide services county-wide, although our base of operations in terms of our physical sites have been historically the West Side, Santa Monica, downtown, Skid Row, and now we have a very large presence in the Antelope Valley with Kensington Campus. So Kensington started about 3 years ago. It was the vision originally of the city of Lancaster and the mayor and the head of the Human Services department there to build a therapeutic community. And so I'm going to always refer to Kensington as a therapeutic community. And if I can leave you with anything else, that's this idea that you're not working in a homeless shelter, you're not working in a housing project, you're working in a therapeutic community. And I'll explain a little bit more about what that means specifically, both to me and the agency in terms of our vision for Kensington. But it was always envisioned to be something that brought all of the components of working with people experiencing homelessness together in one place, and so that we address the needs of an individual. I mean, we already believe at the People Concern that we are as individuals, body, mind, and spirit, right? We all have these components that are part of who we are. And so we've always believed in a holistic wraparound service delivery system, that housing is at the center of that, but it's not the only thing. That people come to us and they will be, some people will need mental health services, some people will need substance abuse services, some people are victims of domestic violence, some people are going to have chronic health conditions, or many people have some or all of these conditions. And so they are wrapped around, so services are wrapped around these individuals to address whatever their needs are. So the Kensington campus was really envisioned to have interim housing, permanent housing, and then comprehensive wraparound services on the campus. But another important component of the campus was engaging the community, not just the community that lives at Kensington, but the external community. And so in a very odd way, we're opening the campus at a time where inviting the community in is very difficult, because we can't have large groups of people on the campus for everyone's safety and social distancing requirements. But our eventual hope is that when the restrictions lift, that Kensington will be the place in the community where we have very active and robust volunteers. So members of the faith community, members of the business community, school communities, and individuals, residents and businesses who just want to help. And so we have, as part of our plan here, a very external facing part of the campus that really invites the community in and to be part of it. So, you are part of the core professional staff that are charged with the responsibility of being on site and making sure that the residents and the people that we're serving are getting the services they need, with the ultimate goal, of course, of moving them into permanent housing. But you will be working alongside, volunteers from the community who will be active participants in people's recovery. And I say recovery in a very broad sense, not just recovery from substance addiction, but really recovery from the traumas in their lives that have led them into homelessness. So that's really important when we think about like the work of Kensington. It's a 14-acre campus. The city of Lancaster donated the land and the entitlements from the city, which is about $7.5 million, and have subsequently put in almost another $500,000 towards the development. The County of Los Angeles Supervisor Barger, who represents that area, I said Catherine Barger, has put in discretionary funds of over $1 million into the project. So there's a high level of investment from the elected officials because of what we're doing. Because the idea of building a therapeutic community, in an area of the county that is very underserved in terms of homeless services, was an investment that they wanted to make for the future of the Antelope Valley. So we're very proud to be partners with the city. They are obviously invested not just from a financial standpoint, but also from a programmatic standpoint, and also, frankly, from a political standpoint as well, because they see Kensington as really an opportunity to showcase the good work that can be done and the transformation of lives that are going to happen on the campus. So when the campus is fully activated, there's currently 100 units of permanent housing, which are the apartments that are built in pods, 25 apartments per pod. So there's 2 pods in the front, there are 2 pods sort of towards the back of the campus, and then as you're going down the walkway, to the left, you'll see the foundation being poured for the last pod. So there will be, when it's all done, there will be 150 permanent housing units. The 3 buildings that look like Quonset huts that are kind of in the center of the campus there, those are the interim housing facilities where I know many of you will be working. In addition to that, right across, that'll be 156 beds, so 104 for men and 52 for women. And then across from the 3 interim housing sites is the dining hall and kind of community area. And then the back part of the campus is the larger services building. And then to the east side of the campus, the kind of multicolored, smaller service building where the laundry is. And that's where we expect to have kind of the wellness activities and arts and all of that. And eventually, the pad in the center, there will be an additional service building that will be built, but that will be a ways off because we don't have the funds right now to complete that. In addition, behind the large services building in the back side of the campus, so that would be the north side of the campus, there will be a pet barn. Pet therapy is going to be part of the campus. So we're going to have goats and rabbits and furry little critters that will be great for the residents and the staff. I think, you probably want to go hug a goat occasionally, or a bunny, or whatever it is that will make you feel better. And that is part of the thought there, is that, having the opportunity for residents who are interested and able to engage. We want people to be able to find whatever their passion is and whatever the connection is. So the idea of having a community of wellness, of health and wellness, so arts, crafts, music, social and recreational opportunities, pet therapy. There'll be an organic garden in the back. So for residents who are interested, they can grow, their own food, and we will use that as part of the communal dining experience. So this is a way to kind of give you a vision of when we say a therapeutic community, we're not here to be the concierge service to do things for people. We do not fix, rescue, or change people. People fix, rescue, and change themselves. What we're here to do is provide tools and resources and support, and occasionally a kick in the pants if somebody needs that, and I don't mean literally, to motivate them to want to move on and really participate in their own recovery. But we're not here to be rescuers. That's not what we do. And so it's important to understand from a service delivery standpoint, why we create these opportunities. So I look at it as kind of the smorgasbord approach, right? Although there will be no more smorgasbords, I think, post-COVID, certainly. Sorry, this is one of the bad sides of taking Zoom calls where you have ringing phones. So the idea that we are able to offer kind of a menu of options for people is important, because not everyone's going to gravitate towards goats and bunnies, and not everyone's going to want to, garden, and not everyone's want to participate in art therapy or music, but all of those things will provide opportunities for people to find the things that they are interested in. And again, this is also a way for us to engage the community. So for those of you that are nervous about, why do I have to take care of the goats and the chickens? Don't worry about that, because part of having volunteers is to engage the community in doing those things. So, our hope is to have the local FFA, Future Farmers America, right? Yeah. FHA regulates the plains, FFA raises the cows. To have, for example, having volunteers, to do that. We have plenty of master gardeners in the community that would be more than happy to come and work with the residents on gardening. And then finally, there is envisioned on the front end of the campus, when you pull into the parking lot where the construction trailer is, that pad of land is eventually envisioned to be some kind of a social enterprise, yet to be determined. So we've been talking with community partners, because it's external facing and it's on, Avenue I. There's an opportunity for some kind of retail, or, I don't know what it will be eventually. We have kind of obviously have to think about, in the post-COVID world, what the options and opportunities are there. But the idea again would be to provide work opportunities. We do have a stipend program that's built into the campus budget. So for residents who live on site, to be able to earn a little bit of extra money with having assigned chores that they can handle. So our facilities and maintenance staff will be responsible for all of the heavy repairs and maintenance and cleaning. We don't put that on the residents. We do ask the residents to keep their personal areas clean and participate, in doing their own laundry and those kinds of things. But in terms of the heavy maintenance and repairs, we will take care of that. But there are lots of jobs like helping in the kitchen and doing gardening. And, again, some of the residents will probably be very interested in the gardening and the pet therapy. So there will be stipend positions if they're interested. The art classes as well. So we try to provide opportunities for people to have some income, both to give them responsibility, but also give them opportunities. And so they get used to the idea that this is not meant to be permanent. The residents who live in the apartments, that is their permanent home until they move or leave the unit for whatever reason. The rest of the campus, the community, is not meant to be permanent. We want it to be pleasant. We want it to be uplifting. We want it to be therapeutic. We want it to be empowering, but it is not meant for people to live there forever and ever. The goal is to move people into permanent housing as quickly as possible, and also make sure that they maintain their housing. So that's kind of an overview of Kensington. Let me talk a little bit about housing first and harm reduction. And I imagine that some of you are maybe very familiar with these concepts, and trauma-informed care, as well. Maybe you've heard the terms, maybe you've worked in environments or with organizations where these were practiced, but let me explain what that means here. Both here at Kensington and here at the People Concerned. So we are a housing first harm reduction agency. And what that means to us is that we believe that housing is the most stabilizing factor in a person's life, that without a secure place to live, it is very difficult for people to really stabilize their lives. It's hard to access treatment. It's hard when you have to worry about where your next meal is coming from, where you're going to store your belongings, your medications. So we see housing as an anchor, but it's not just about sticking people in housing. It's not just housing first, it's housing always. So if we are not helping people retain their housing, then we're not really doing them any great service, because if they get evicted and they're on a rental subsidy, they're basically doomed for at least 5 years. They're going to be out of the ability to rent an apartment and get a rental subsidy. And with the people we're working with, we know that they largely tend to be disabled or are going to require some level of support for a period of time as they're making the transition into permanent housing. So providing housing and retaining housing, those are hand in glove. When we talk about permanent supportive housing, we have the housing unit, but the wraparound services are equally important. Harm reduction is not, and a lot of people confuse this with that we're promoting drug use, that we're fans of people using drugs, that we think that's good and it's okay. And we don't think any of those things, but we also recognize that we work with people who abuse substances. That's just a fact. And so, we are not going to use housing or services as a reward for good behavior. So there isn't this idea that you have to jump through all these hoops, in order to receive housing and services. It doesn't mean harm reduction doesn't mean that anything goes. It doesn't mean that we, condone or allow keeping or using drugs, on the premises. What it means is we recognize that harm reduction and substance abuse treatment is on a continuum, right? You have people who are actively using and have no desire to stop on this end, and you have people who are clean and sober and in recovery and are committed to that on the other end of the spectrum. And what we say is that we, of course, want everyone, to get to a place of abstinence if they're able to do that, because it's healthier for them. We don't want anyone to die. We don't want anyone to compromise their health further, because drug abuse is not a healthy activity. However, we recognize some people may never get to complete abstinence, but if they can reduce their use, that reduces their harm to themselves and others. And so our work is about helping them, to the best of our ability, move along that continuum. When I said earlier, we don't change people or fix people or rescue people. We can't force somebody to be clean and sober. We can't force somebody to be med compliant. What we can do is create the kind of environment where they make better choices. And that's the work of creating a therapeutic community, is that we help people understand that these are the consequences of your choices. We all, in our lives, our clients are no different than we are, right? We make choices every day. Some choices have positive consequences, some choices have negative consequences. So that's the construct of harm reduction. It's not that we are promoting, people getting loaded and swinging from the chandeliers. We don't think that's a good thing at all. And that kind of behavior doesn't contribute to a therapeutic community. So there have to be limits, there have to be boundaries, there have to be consequences, but we don't come from a place. Consequences to us isn't the first reaction, is one of being punitive and saying, if you use, you're absolutely going to lose your housing, you're absolutely going to lose your services. We say there's a context for using. If you use and you are physically violent or threatening or you steal, no, you cannot maintain your housing here in this point in time if you do those things, because the natural consequence of your behavior is you cannot do harm to yourself or others. So there are limits there, but it doesn't mean that, you go out and you get loaded, you come back, you sleep it off. The next day, you're doing the walk of shame because you recognize that that's not, what you want to do in your life. Then we're going to work with you and help you continue down the path to the best of, your ability and ours to get to the place where you want to be. So again, I imagine there may be some questions about that. And I know this is a little nuanced, and it probably sounds like I'm being a little wishy-washy, and I'm not. I'm really trying to be clear, but understand that context is everything. And so it's important to understand, I will tell you, there are 3 things in your work and 3 things at this agency that we will not tolerate from the staff or from our clients. we never do anything that's illegal, immoral, or unethical. We will not do those things, and we will not allow our clients to do those things. And the rules are pretty simple for the clients. There's no tolerance for violence or threats of violence or for stealing, other people's property. That includes the agencies as well. Other than that, we have a lot of latitude in trying to help people, through multiple times get to where they need to go. So I really want to emphasize, from a staff perspective, that we do not do things. We will push ourselves and push the limits to be as flexible as we can be, but we never cross the line into anything that potentially would compromise you as a staff member or compromise the agency. Those are the consequences of those actions are you're not going to be working here anymore. And that is sort of the last and final. And I say that not to threaten anybody. I just want to be clear. And you probably heard Carrie and other people leaders this week. One of our mantras here is clear is kind. And so we try to be very clear with our staff and with the people we serve what is expected of all of us. And these are things that are expected, and no one is above the law, myself included. So, we practice what we preach here. And so that is something that you can always rest assured that you're working with an organization that takes these things very seriously, that we never cross the line in those things. It's really, really important. Finally, trauma-informed care. Again, it's become a little bit of a sort of the new shiny penny, if you will, especially in human services work. It's not a new concept. It's been, around for a very long time. What it means in terms of our work here. And there are, several principles of trauma-informed care, and I'm not going to do a deep dive into that because I'm assuming and hoping that that's been covered or will be covered in some part of your orientation if it hasn't already. So, the construct basically is that people that we serve, and all of us in our lives, all of us have experienced trauma in one form or another. The people that we serve often have cumulative trauma that's happened over a long period of time. In some cases, it started very early in their life. In some cases, later in their life. They may have had a catastrophic event, the death of a partner, a divorce, substance abuse, addiction, mental illness, whatever it is, fill in the blank, and people have trauma. And our ability to deal with that trauma has a huge impact in our lives, both currently and going forward. And for many of the people we serve, they've never really had an opportunity to deal with that trauma. And it often informs, the way they behave and the way they interact with others. And often it's very hard to break through, some of those defenses. So if using an example of someone, for instance, who may have been in the foster care system as a young child, has never really, developed any kind of attachment, has never really learned to feel safe or secure, and has spent their life, essentially in the system. And then they come out of the system and they're not equipped really to be able to live independently and manage their lives. And at some point they come and along the way, there may be, instances of domestic violence, where they are physically or sexually assaulted, or they are a perpetrator if they have had that experience, or they may have had an undiagnosed mental illness and have, part of the symptoms and the manifestation of the symptoms, has bounced them from place to place. So I'm giving you kind of extreme examples, but not so much, because the truth is that you work with our population, you're going to find that this story that I've just made up is really based on my experience of 21 years here at this agency and working with thousands and thousands of our clients. And so I'm not suggesting that every person we work with has that story. What I am suggesting is that every person we work with has a lot of cumulative trauma. It may not be that path, but it manifests itself in very similar ways. And so by the time they come to us, they have had years, in many cases, of unresolved trauma in their life. And so our framework for trauma-informed care is to really take the approach of, not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you, right? You see the difference between that what's wrong with you sort of sends the message that you're fundamentally broken, you're screwed up, and it's my job to fix you. What happened to you is really coming from a place of empathy, of saying, I see you, I understand that there are things in your life that have not been so great. And so, I'm here to help. What can I do to help? So it's a very different framework for how we look at the way we serve our clients. We don't see them as broken, damaged folks that we need to fix. We see them as people who have experienced a tremendous amount of resiliency, in fact, to get them to where they are. And our job is we're the helpers now to kind of walk with them in the next phase of their journey. So that's an important distinction. When we talk about care plans, that's what we mean is we're not saying, okay, I'm going to write down this treatment plan for you and you're going to follow it, client. This is about how are we going to engage in, here you are, here's where you want to be, what can we do to help you get to that place? And my job is to walk alongside you in that journey, to support you, to guide you and direct you, not to tell you what to do, but to, sort of lay out clearly, here are the choices and here are the consequences of those choices. So trauma-informed care is really focused through the lens of empathy. If I could sort of titrate it down to a simple sentence, is really, again, think of not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. All right, so that's a lot of information. We're 30 minutes in. I think it's time to open it up to questions, comments, thoughts. I'm happy, as I said, to answer any questions about anything I said that wasn't clear to you, anything I didn't say. If you have questions about the agency, the work, Kensington, I'm ready, able, and willing to take your questions. So fire away.
I have a question about volunteers.
Yes.
I noticed when we went on the tour, the other campuses, they aren't having any volunteers right now.
Right.
How is that going to work with us opening? Are we going to not have volunteers through the COVID period?
We won't have a lot of volunteers. We probably initially won't have any. And then as kind of the weeks go on into August and September, as we begin to see what public health is going to do about easing restrictions a little bit, the first priority is getting all of you and the residents settled and making sure that everybody feels comfortable before we start introducing, new people onto the campus. The good news about the campus, as you know, is we've got 14 acres. So social distancing on the campus isn't that difficult. As we start to get into more intimate settings, though, it becomes more challenging. So, for instance, a lot of the work that volunteers would be doing would be working in the dining hall, working in the community facility, working in the health and wellness. And that requires, some closeness. So our plan is right now is to ease folks in. We have a huge pent-up demand for volunteers. I mean, I feel it breaks my heart, honestly, that we have done so much work in outreach in the community and people are ready to go and we have to, kind of hold them back. But we have to do that for everybody's safety and people understand. I hope that will not be a long time, though, frankly, Connie, because, as I said, our vision was that Kensington was going to be a very active place that we could welcome the community in. So it doesn't, I will just say personally, from my perspective, it doesn't feel very good to say, oh, we have a therapeutic community, but you people can't come in. That's kind of counterintuitive. But I hope you understand why. And as I said, I think the community members who want to volunteer understand why. We're not trying to be difficult. It's just, we're working under constraints. But my hope is that, and it's when you did your tour, in a normal time, you would see volunteers everywhere in all of the other facilities. I mean, we have at any given, time about 700 volunteers a month throughout the agency in the various programs. So that's a lot of people. You figure that's about 20, 25 people that are on site at the various and doing all kinds of things. Thanks for the question. Others?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Other questions?
John, I know that there was a lot of questions about the pet farm or the goats, and so you finally resolved that curiosity between the team when we were going to different sites.
About what is the goat?
About the goats and stuff.
Yeah, it's funny, it's kind of, it started off as a little bit of a joke because I'm a big animal fan, and so I'm probably just a frustrated farmer. That's probably the truth of the matter.
Okay.
But I have an obsession with pygmy goats because I just think they are the cutest. And when I don't know how much you know about them, but when they're little, they both follow you like a dog and they hop like a rabbit. They're unbelievably cute. Wow. And they're very snuggly and soft and cuddly. And so you hold them and they like to, chew on you, and they're just really, really cute. And so, and not everybody likes goats. So I just want to acknowledge that. And when you see them, they go bah, bah, constantly, which drives some people crazy. I personally think it's adorable. So, it started off honestly as a joke where I said my retirement job was I was going to move to Kensington and I'd be the chief goat herder. That was and that kind of morphed into every time we talk about Kensington, we talk about the goats. And I actually have 4 that a friend of mine is keeping at a ranch in Leona Valley until we're actually ready to receive them. They're growing up. So we got them. They were preemies that a friend of mine actually had to bottle feed because we didn't think they were going to make it. Now they've been nicknamed the Kensington Kids. So they're really, really cute and fun. And I hope just, that the residents and you all will enjoy them just a tiny smidge because they won't be the only addition there. But that's the story of the goats. So I know everybody, on the people concerned side is like, the goats, shut up about the goats.
It was a highlight for us.
They are real, yeah.
Do you know what other animals they will be having on as far as in that therapeutic community?
Yeah, so I think right now we are looking at goats, rabbits, maybe some guinea pigs. We're kind of trying to keep it to small animals. Horses, cows, pigs. I think we might be able to squeeze in a potbelly pig or 2. But when you start getting into larger farm animals, honestly, the upkeep and all of that, and you need more space. And so the goal here really is to think about the idea that the animals will provide an opportunity for people who want to touch and hold and interact, with. One of the reasons I'm so hip on goats is because they're gentle, they're playful, they're cute. But I mean, more than that, they provide that, bunnies, if you've ever spent any time, bunnies like to be held, most bunnies like to be held, they're soft. So we're looking at kind of smaller animals. I think chickens would be great. I know they're noisy and I'm a little concerned about them being so close to the permanent housing back there, but I don't know, we might try it. And if we end up with a bunch of cranky residents who don't like chickens, then we may have to rethink that, but just to provide fresh eggs. And again, if you've never had that experience of what it's like to go out and, get eggs from freshly laid eggs, it's quite a boost, I think. And I think we've heard that from our, residents in the past that, there's something about, I can imagine there are going to be times when residents just are having a low point, or the staff too. I mean, this is geared towards the residents, but they're there for the staff too. You're sure there are going to be some days where you're going to want to hug a bunny or kiss a goat or, whatever is going to make you feel better, So I hope, that it will be as impactful as I believe that it will be. We have, as part, not related to goats, but one of our programs is Canine Connection as part of the people concerned. And you would say, well, why do we have a dog rescue program? It's not a dog rescue program. It's a child rescue program. The dogs are the modality. And so that's what this is about. And, I said, we don't rescue people. So it is not really a child rescue program. it's a therapeutic program for children, and I see the pet therapy as exactly that, is an opportunity. It's a modality. It's another way to reach people who we might not be able to connect with, or to give folks an opportunity to deal with their trauma in ways that are constructive, right, and healthy, and provide, animals provide unconditional love, which is something that, most of us, all of us strive for in our life, right, to have that experience, hopefully with another human being, but certainly if not with animals. So that's the goal here. So, I go on and on about goats, and it's really not about goats. They're a piece of the puzzle here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Did you have a question? No. Other questions? No. Use this opportunity. You won't get face-to-face time very often.
How did they come up with the name Kensington?
That was actually our partner on the development, the actual developer that built the campus. One of the principals has a daughter named Kensington, and Kensington is also an area in London, if you know where that is. And so it was kind of one of her favorite places, and it sort of stuck. It was just one of those things. It was a little bit of so it's not really named after her daughter per se. It just so happened that her daughter was named Kensington. And as we kind of explored that a little bit more, we thought, oh, this is kind of interesting as a way to, identify the campus, and the city liked it a lot too. So that's how we came to the name. Yeah.
John, you spoke about being with the agency for 21 years. I know I've read your bio, but could you add some more context or just some more information about when you started with the agency, what you were doing, and how you progressed?
So I came. Yeah, thank you. I'll be happy to do that. Because one of the things I hate the worst is talking about myself. So I came in 1999. Prior to that, for 12 years, I was the director of an AIDS service organization. We did residential care and supportive housing for people with HIV and AIDS. And I started that. I kind of spent the first part of my career. So just a quick bio about me. I'm a Valley dude. I was born and raised in the San Fernando Valley. I was originally, my first plan was to become a priest. The Jesuits completely ruined my life because they taught me empathy and compassion. The challenge there was the 3 vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. The poverty and obedience I thought I could live with. The chastity part I thought would be a little bit more challenging. So decided then that I wanted to become a physician, and was actually headed to medical school at UCLA when I had a family, a very serious family trauma that derailed that. And so I went into the for-profit sector for about 10 years. And then eventually, at the height of the AIDS epidemic in the mid to late 1980s, a friend of mine who was an attorney was doing some pro bono work for an AIDS service organization. And so I became involved as a volunteer and actually raised money to open the first AIDS hospice here in the San Fernando Valley, and then eventually became the director of that organization, was there for 12 years. And I always, wanted to work with very low income and poor people. It's just my plan, when I finished medical school, was I wanted to go to Appalachia and practice family medicine. So clearly I am, I have a defect in that I'm drawn to, work with poor people. And I say that tongue in cheek, obviously. This is the life I've chosen and the work that I love. And so by 1999, AIDS had become more of a chronically manageable disease. And I really was interested in working with a broader population of people who were experiencing poverty. And so I became the director of what was then the Ocean Park Community Center, OPCC, in 1999. And when I came to the agency, we had a budget of about $3.5 million, and we had about 70 staff members at the time. And now we are a $70 million organization and have almost 600 staff members. So And I say that not to brag, like, aren't we great because we grew? We never grew for the sake of growth. We grew in response to the needs of the people that we serve. And, the community needs have shifted over the years. And what I can say is that when I first came to the agency, the first 10 years or so, uh, probably for 7 years, 7 to 8 years. What I saw typically, and I'm speaking in broad generalities here, but what I saw typically was that we were serving both men and women. We've always served about 2/3 men, a third women. Always served people with mental illness. And I'll just tell you a quick story. So my first year at the agency, that was around 2000, I was having lunch with a colleague of a sister organization. I won't tell you who it is because you'll know the organization. The person is now retired, but we were having lunch and he said to me, "Oh, I'm so glad OPCC exists because when we have somebody we can't deal with, we send them to you." And I thought, well, that's a weird thing to say. I mean, there's a backhanded compliment in there somewhere. But as I worked at the agency, I began to understand, what he meant. And that's not to say that we're the only organization that works with really difficult people. But the fact of the matter is that we always have had a sweet spot for working with people with multiple, comorbidities, multiple challenges in their lives, long histories of serious untreated mental illness, victims of domestic violence. And so I began to understand what he meant, which is that we had these very complex challenges with the people we were serving, where going back to harm reduction and trauma-informed care, where other agencies were like, you look at me cross-eyed, you're out of here. You're disrespectful. You say the wrong thing, we're going to terminate you from services. You drink, we're going to throw you out. It was a lot of that. And I began to really understand that our frame of reference in terms of service delivery was just really, really different. So the first 7 or 8 years, what I saw typically was that we were primarily serving people. If they were substance addicted, they were alcoholics, occasionally marijuana, and once in a while, like crack or heroin. But that was a very small percentage. It was mostly alcohol and weed. What I began to notice, around year 9, 10, 11, is that there was a pretty significant shift in the population. We were seeing, the proliferation of crystal meth and crack cocaine were the drugs of choice. Yes, alcohol was still a part of it, but there was a dramatic shift. And we were seeing people who had very serious health conditions, because in the beginning of my tenure, people would get they would get clean and sober. They would actually stop drinking or stop using. They often didn't have a rental subsidy. They would go back to work and they would be able to make enough money to pay market rents. And occasionally, we'd have somebody who would need a subsidy. So it was about 80-20, right? 80% of our clients were in the first category. They were going to become self-sufficient fairly quickly. They were going to recover. If they were struggling with mental illness, they were med compliant. They wanted to go into treatment. It wasn't that difficult. And we always had, 20% that were just difficult, right? They weren't quite there yet. Those percentages have flipped in the last 10 years. So by and large, and again, I'm not saying this to pathologize everybody. I'm not saying that every person, fits into this category. I'm saying as a overall trend change. You asked me what a little bit more context. What does 21 years look like here? There's been a very dramatic shift in the client population, and as a result of that, we've had to adapt, to what we were doing. The Safe Haven, I don't know if you visited Cloverfield, the Cloverfield Services Center. We started that as a really a very low barrier, high tolerance residential facility. And I will tell you, when we did it, I was told by colleagues and funders, "You're out of your mind. This is just a disaster waiting to happen." And in fact, it was the right thing to do. And it has not been a disaster. It's been anything but that. And it's been, a model that we've been able to use to adapt our other programs. So I share all of that just to say that, we're an organization that's always growing and evolving and understanding. You have to understand that your audience, right? The people that you're serving. And if those people change over time, you have to be able to adapt. You can't say we're going to be very rigid and this is the way we've done it. And so that this means this is the way we're always going to do it. And so I think, we are certainly not perfect. We make mistakes, but we are a learning community. I mean, part of, what we pride ourselves on is that we're willing to take risks. We're willing not to be reckless in any way, but, by doing, we learn. And I will say to all of you, for as long as you're part of the Kensington team, and I hope that's for a very long time, I really, love to see people grow. That one of the nice things about this organization, I've hired people who were receptionists that are now program managers and directors in this agency. So there's, if you take the reins and you're really interested in doing this work, this is a wonderful place to do it. And yes, I'm biased, and I'm saying that because I'm the CEO. And of course, I think we're wonderful, but I'm also saying it because it's true. And this is a great place to be for your personal and professional development if you take advantage of the opportunities that are there. We're not going, in a lot of ways we work with our staff. It's our job to support you and kick you in the butt once in a while. And I don't mean that literally, figuratively, to support you, to, move along in your journey. But I hope that you will see this as an opportunity to really grow. And sort of bringing it back to what does that mean for Kensington is, as time goes on, and as the campus is fully activated, you'll grow into, the rhythm of what it's like we'll see as the residents, come onto the campus, as you work with them, as you begin to see them as, individuals and what their needs are. We will see, every person is unique, of course, but we will begin to see some patterns emerge, right, of the residents, what their needs are. Those will come up, and we're going to rely on you as the frontline providers to be able to say, we're really kind of lacking in this area. We need more of this, or, here's what we're hearing or seeing from the clients. We want that information. This is not, we try very hard not to be top down, and I'm not suggesting there isn't a hierarchy and there aren't, rules and structures, because that you can't run an organization of this size without having that. But what I will say is that, we very much value the input of our frontline providers, because you're the eyes and ears. You're dealing with it every day. You're seeing it every day. What comes to me gets filtered, right? I mean, the truth of the matter is, information that gets to me is everybody who comes to me wants something, right? They're trying to get me to do what they want, either right, make a decision or fund something, or in some cases try and manipulate me, to their way of thinking. So I'm very clear that, I'm not sitting across the desk from the residents, right, every single day. You all are doing that. And so I encourage you, as part of a healthy staff team is working with your people leaders and your team to be able to be creative and thoughtful and not be afraid to kind of lift up issues that you think that we should be paying more attention to. The best ideas aren't mine always, sometimes, but not always. That makes sense. That's a long answer to your question, but
yes, but it gives me a lot of information.
A little bit more about me. Yeah. What's wrong with John? You just heard. That Jesuit training, I'll tell you, ruined my life. And I mean that kiddingly.
I understand.
That and my great-grandmother, yeah. Other questions? I will just say, I know I said I kick in the butt twice, and it's probably not your initial exposure to how I normally talk, but that colloquial hopefully paints a picture and is not in any way an endorsement of physical violence.
I can vouch for John that I've never been kicked in the butt.
I tend to motivate people. I'm a storyteller, so I'm usually good using words. So once in a while, my facial expressions too. If you work with me long enough, the one thing I will tell you, and I'll just warn you right now, on a 14-acre campus, it is of all my defects, this is another one. But I am the kind of person that can spot. I'm obsessive about the facilities, the cleanliness of the facilities, and the maintenance of the facilities. And the reason I'm obsessive about it is because I believe, and I really firmly believe this, that the people who come to us there's already a power dynamic at work, right? They're a supplicant because we have something they want and they need. And so there's already this, one up, one down power over, which we try very, very hard not to reinforce. But also, especially people who've lived on the streets or lived in their cars or have been in really rough conditions, when they come into a place and it's dirty and it remains dirty, and the message we're sending to them is we don't care about ourselves and we really don't care about you. And that is just not okay. And that's, you know, the old adage, you never get a second chance to make a first impression, is true. So the cleanliness of the facilities, the work facilities, and I know, you know, we all get clutter on our desk. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just when things are dirty or unkempt or broken. So I have this uncanny ability, and the facilities director will tell you this, that I can walk into a building and at 50 yards, I can spot, you know, something that needs to be fixed or repaired. So if I do that when I'm at Kensington, don't be offended. It's a genetic default. And the facilities team kind of knows that it kind of keeps them on their toes. And we're turning over to you a brand new, you know, campus. I mean, no one has lived there, no one has worked there. So, you know, part of our role, and I didn't really talk about this, is the issue of stewardship. And we take that very seriously too. You know, at the end of the day, no matter how big our budget is, none of this money is our money. If it comes from the government, it's tax dollars that we all pay. And if it's private money, it's donors' money that's been given to us, entrusted to us to use for the benefit of our clients. So I don't see this as any of us, we don't own this. It belongs to the community. And so we have a special responsibility, I think a higher responsibility, to be good stewards, you know, that we're not wasteful, that we don't damage property, that we don't take things for granted, that these are gifts that are given to us, that are entrusted to us. And I think that that is a sacred trust that we should not violate. So, you know, I share this with you again, and, you know, I try to do this with humor, but so that you understand that fundamentally, we are all stewards. It's not just my job to do that. This is, you know, this is your workspace. This is the space that people are serving, that we are serving collectively, but that you are serving every day. This is where they're going to live. So we want to send a loud and clear message that we care about them, that we care about their health and safety. We care about their well-being. We care that we're not putting them or any of you or our volunteers in situations where they would get hurt or they would get sick, or that they would not be able to address their basic needs because we don't fix things when they're broken. You know, or we take the attitude, oh, you know, so we ran a card into the wall, so what? You know, no big deal. You know, the toilet's broken. It's been broken for 3 weeks. I mean, whatever. There's other toilets. Somebody can use it. That is not our mindset. So, you know, very much if you see something, say something. You know, that you know, facilities can't fix it if they don't know it's broken. So with that, we're getting close to the end of our time here. Any last minute questions? Anybody want to be brave enough or one to make sure that I covered that I didn't cover? Selena, did you have a question?
No, I didn't have a question.
I have a question.
Okay.